Hey everybody, and welcome back to Retro Magic. This episode is all about games. But before we get started, I noticed that I totally forgot to show you a Master System game cartridge the last time. So this is how a cartridge looks like for the Master System, and this is how it compares to an NES game. Pretty much half the size. Well, so without further ado, let's get to the games. Enjoy.
Alright, let's get started with one of the classics. This is Alex Kidd in Miracle World. It was Sega's first attempt to establish some sort of mascot for the company compared to what Mario was for Nintendo. This game is just, I would say, an ordinary platformer, although it isn't too bad at all. But, it is so difficult, like many games from that era. It's like, you've got hit 3 times and you gotta start the whole game again. It's brutal. And here we are with Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, Sega finally managed to establish a mascot later on the Mega Drive. This is where Sonic had its debut. They also, after his big success, decided to port Sonic games to other consoles like the Master System. This is one of the cases where the Master System massively profited by the success of the Genesis or Mega Drive. And in the case of Sonic, they definitely did. Although the Master System, of course, didn't have the power of the Mega Drive, so they had to change pretty much the entire game for the conversion to Master System Game Gear. And basically the same thing happened again in the case of Sonic 2, which pretty much has nothing in common with the Mega Drive or Genesis version of Sonic 2, which featured a two-player mode, where the second player, in the form of Tails, could help out Sonic to get through his adventure. And unfortunately, the Master System version only came out in Europe because this is where the Master System was quite successful. Japan and the United States only saw a release for the Sega Game Gear, which unfortunately doesn't give you the same experience because of the smaller screen size of the Game Gear and the lower resolution. You simply couldn't see as much as on the big screen. So if you want to enjoy the game the way it's meant to be, you either have to import the PAL version or get the Sonic Gems collection for the Nintendo GameCube. And in the case of Sonic Chaos, the situation is even worse because the US and Japan not even got a Game Gear version up until the year 2000, where the company Majesco released the Game Gear version in the United States. Strangely enough, both games can still be found quite cheap on eBay, or as part of the Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the Sony PlayStation 2. Either way, these games are definitely something special, and because they have nothing in common with the Mega Drive or Genesis versions of those games that you might know, at least in the case of Sonic 2, they're an absolutely must for any Sonic or Master System fan out there. Master of Darkness. Just by looking at its gameplay and its overall setting, you can tell that this game is a very obvious Castlevania clone, and in my opinion, it's a real good one. First of all, it's not that hard, and secondly, it totally lives by its great atmosphere, which for some reason manages to attract me even more than the one of Castlevania. It's got this dark and misty mood of Victorian England during the times of Jack the Ripper. Just like the previous two Sonic games, this game as well was only released in Europe. There was a release for the Sega Game Gear in the US, but as before, the problem was that the picture is zoomed too much in because of the small screen, and so you cannot see sometimes when an enemy is just coming around the corner for you. This is why I would definitely go for the Master System version of this game, just because it's totally worth it. Here we've got Ys, one of the few RPGs that were released on the Master System and the first installment of the E-Series. This one was released for pretty much each and every home computer and console back in the day. Compared to the Famicom version, this saw released in the United States on the Master System as well as on the Turbo Duo. It's a very classic Japanese style RPG which is unique. You bump into your enemies to fight them instead of pushing a button to use your sword. The game received very positive reviews back in the day, and it's definitely one of the best RPGs on the Master System. While in fact this is actually even a bit more of an action RPG. The graphics are nice and so is the sound, and there is a save feature, which is just great. The first Phantasy Star game was originally only released on the Master System, and many consider it as the best RPG on the system. Well, I've got to say that I was never a big fan of RPGs which were switching to the first-person perspective when entering a dungeon. Besides that, I was always fascinated by the futuristic look and setting of the game. The game starts off with a tragedy that I don't want to spoil to you, but it's bad enough for a female main character to go on her adventure. Although this game features also a battery saving system, it can still be very tough at times, so be ready for a challenge. Since the Master System version can be extremely expensive, you probably want to have a look at the Game Boy Advance collection or the PlayStation 2 collection where this game is included. Asterix, if you're not familiar with the franchise, is a French comic book series which is very successful in Europe. This is probably the reason why these games, and this is just the first one here, were only released in Europe, and so if you're living in other parts of the world you might have to import this game, and you definitely should, because it is one of the best platformers for the Master System. Graphics and animations are just great, and luckily the game isn't too difficult. Just beware to get the right one, because the two sequels, they were not so great. Originally released in the arcades, Streets of Rage saw a port of the game for pretty much each and every Sega console back in the day, while the Master System version really shines, as you can tell by the great graphics. You might want to go for the Genesis or Mega Drive version nowadays, because it's just more arcade perfect. The hardware limitations made the Master System version also a little bit easier, because the system couldn't simply put as much enemies on screen as the Mega Drive or Genesis version. Yet another platformer, this time it's Psycho Fox, a platformer with a little strange momentum when it comes to jumping, but you'll get used to it after a little while. While the graphics are not outstanding and the gameplay is just about average, it is still fun to play. And what might be interesting for collectors, this game is an exclusive. There was no port to another system at the time, and there has also never been any kind of re-release for the Wii Virtual Console or anything of that kind. Still, the game is rather cheaply to get even nowadays for around $30. So this is definitely a game that you should look out for if you have Master System and want to collect for it. One of the defining games for the Master System was for sure Wonder Boy. The game had several sequels that we will probably talk about in another video, but with every sequel, the game became more and more RPG-like. This first installment, though, was a pure platformer, and it was so successful that Hudson Soft developed a clone under the title Adventure Island for Nintendo systems. I think it's safe to say that the classic Wonder Boy game belongs in each and every Master System collection. Although you also gotta say that collecting the entire series might get a little pricey. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll definitely put up another video with more Master System games in the future. If you like the video, if you like the channel, then hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and have a good time. See you soon, and goodbye.